Hi, I'm Brian Welsh, and this is the Blocktalk podcast. Here we want to have real conversations about what's happening in the industry, what's happening in the block management manufacturing industry, what the challenges are, and what's shaping the future. I started it to talk to people who live it day to day, industry experts, government, anyone else who's a stakeholder who feeds into that industry. So whether you're here for a fresh perspective, insight, inspiration, whatever you're here for, I'm glad you're listening. Thanks very much.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Blocktalk podcast, today with a slightly different angle. If you're a regular listener, you'll be used to hearing Brian's introduction, but today he's on the other side of the table. Yep, today I'm taking the control away from you, Brian.
Shit.
I'm Neil Watt, someone who spent many years in the property factoring industry in Scotland, and in a moment of madness a few months ago, Brian took me up on a suggestion I made to him at the end of his previous podcast with me, for me to interview him. So here we are, and over the course of the next hour or so, I aim to find out more about Brian, his thoughts on business in general, and of course, his thoughts on the property factoring industry from, dare I say, an outsider's perspective.
Yep.
Now, we all know Brian can talk, but I hope he leaves me some time also to delve into his company CPL, his plans for its future, and generally to find out how Brian feels his podcast journey into being Scotland's answer to Steve Bartlett is going. So, Brian, how are you feeling? And does this still seem like a good idea to be relinquishing control of your podcast, even if only for an hour?
Absolutely not. No, I'm terrified. I don't know. I know some of the questions, but I'm sure you're going to throw some in.
Oh, we've got to keep you on your toes, Brian.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get going. So the Blocktalk podcast invited its listeners to send in questions that they would like Brian to answer. But Brian, before we dive into those, can I ask you to set the scene? I know you, I've known you for a few years, but for those that don't, tell us, who is Brian Welsh, and tell us a bit about your journey, Brian.
Okay, all right. My journey to here. Gosh, right. Okay, I'll try and keep this brief. Okay, so I grew up in Dunblane. So I didn't even think I'd talk about this stuff. My dad was an electrical engineer, something my twin brother followed him into doing, actually. My mother was a housewife, and she looked after me. Dad's still here, mum's not. So I hated school. I wasn't overly academic. My twin brother was very academic, actually. Hated school, didn't go to university, which maybe I have a slight chip on my shoulder about, but maybe not. I don't know. Sometimes it bothers me, sometimes it doesn't. But I did go to college and do a diploma in computing and did COBOL development. Now, nobody listening to this will probably be old enough to remember what COBOL is. So I did that, and then I landed a job. I mean, it was miles away in Bridge of Allen, which is like at least 5 minutes down the road from Dunblane. Working for a legal software house. And I mean, it's bonkers, right? You know, you grow up in a small place like Dunblane as a legal software house in Bridge of Allen. I worked for him for the age of 20. He sold the business when I was 33. And in that time, we did a shed load of legal software, and we we entered the property software market as well. And that's when our first factory.
So when are we going back to here, Brian?
When did I start working for him? 1990. Okay. So around 98, we wrote our first factoring software product. So hence why I said on a recent LinkedIn posting that I'd been in the market or been in the industry for about 26 years, or maybe slightly more. So I did that legal and property software, and then 2003 we were sold to an English software company called Mountain Software. And to be fair, I met this guy called Ian Knox, 2003. I worked for him for 2003 to 2007. He taught me so much about business. He really does. In fact, every time I say that to him, he says, I'll send you the bill. And then 2007, he sold us on, and we ended up being bought by the fifth largest software company in the UK, largest privately owned, which is a company called Iris Software, who had divisions that did everything, mainly accountancy-based software company. And they had a legal division And I ended up in a role, God knows how, but it was a role that I loved and was suited to. I ended up with a role in M&A, so the operational side of M&A. So they used to buy companies, and I think there was about 5 or 6 under my belt by the time I left there. But they'd buy a company and they'd pitch me in to run it, and it was a really interesting job because the whole point of it was to find ways to make revenue. Okay, but if you couldn't make revenue, you had to cut costs because it was a PE, it was PE backed, right? So it's private equity backed, so you had to cut costs. If they had a whole load of covenants and everything and targets they needed to make. It's a really enjoyable job, actually. Although you weren't overly well liked, obviously, because you were restructuring all the time and all these sort of things. So I did that 2007 to 2010. So 2009, credit crunch, property, the market's all slumped. And I went, well, okay, so where's my next one? And they said, there isn't another one because we're not buying anyone at the moment. I went, oh, okay, that's not overly good. And they said, but hey, here's a business in Bournemouth that's looking for an MD that we own. How do you fancy going to run that? Now,
that's a legal software business?
No, that was actually completely different. I can't even remember what it was. Software business, though. So I recurring revenue software business, which is all I'd done. So now, I didn't live with my children. I hadn't lived with my children since they were 2 and 5, and they would have been, Christ, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 by that stage. But I certainly did not want to be 400 miles away from them because they lived in Dunblane. So I said, no, I don't want to do that. I said, but see that factoring thing that you kind of have that doesn't really fit because it's in the legal division because it was owned by a legal software company when you bought it. I said, how about I just buy that off you because it doesn't fit with your plan anyway. So I gave up my redundancy package, paid them some money for this legal software business, and CPL was born on the back of a fag packet because literally it was, we're not buying anyone else. You don't have a job. Do this or take that. And a month later, I was out. So
I'm intrigued to learn where the factoring angle came from a boy with, by your own admission, not too many qualifications, if any, Brian. You get into the software game. And Dunblane is not really the hotbed of property factoring, but somebody had already had an inclination to look at factoring software at that time.
So yeah. So back in those days, back in the 90s, mainstream products didn't exist. So you didn't have, you had legal software companies, but nobody really had done anything for factoring. So there was one product kicking around that market that everyone used, which you'll remember. And I think the company who owned them was a company called Quorum. I might be wrong. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, and this was an old, what they called a 4GL, fourth generation language product that was built on the back end of Sage. Okay.
Yep.
And it was Spears Gumley. It was Lorraine McDonald that was looking for a new product. And we were a software company, a legal software company, but we also did other stuff. We did general commercial. So we did builders merchants. We did leasing companies, container businesses. I mean, God, I'm trying to remember now, but tons of other. I mean, we even did stuff in the rag trade. So for people who sold garments and fashion and all this sort of stuff. So huge amount of different diverse products. And part of that business was to go out to look for other markets. And Lorraine was looking, and Spears came along. We won the contract to do it, and we built that in 1998.
So CPL was born.
No. Well, CPL wasn't born there. That was still the previous company. So factoring was owned by what was a company called GB Systems, which is my first boss called Graham Booth, who I actually ran into in a restaurant in Glasgow about 6 months ago. So he owned that business, and so we were in factoring all the way from 1998. But I only started 2010, but for that period of time, we dealt with facts. In fact, there was a product in between those two as well. Yeah. But the current product set was built around 2007, 2008.
Well, we'll come on to CPL as we move through. We'll talk a bit more about the build of CPL and what's current. I don't think you've particularly answered the question about tell me about Brian Welsh. I've heard about his business journey.
Okay, well, you see, this is the
young
problem.
lad from Dunblane, but then you kind of veered off into business. Why would that be?
That's probably because that's the main thought.
Yeah.
Okay, I have 2 grown-up children. I'm shite at golf, but I love it. By the way, look at that. What's that?
That's
here for 6 months. That's that.
Okay.
That's the 4-ball trophy from the golf club I play in.
So you relied on 3 others too?
No, I relied on one other.
Oh, one other.
Scott was amazing. I think I only contributed in the final.
Okay.
But
You've
anyway.
got the trophy too.
Well, he had it for 6 months and gave it to me because his wife didn't want to clean it. So yeah.
So I see that was pride of place. There's no CPL regalia up there. It's all, all sport.
Well, that only arrived. Like, I need to put it somewhere. I wasn't taking it back home. So yeah.
So you're still golfing?
Yes, badly. Well,
Okay.
You've played against me. I split my time between London and Glasgow nowadays. Spend a lot of time with my kids. And, I don't know, work has always been a massive part of my life. And it's not really, I guess today, at 55, I think I probably just managed to find work-life balance. And I never found it up to now.
Well, you probably didn't find that because work-life balance wasn't a thing, Brian. Probably pre-COVID, it's something that's emerged now, but yeah, I think we all know what you mean. Okay, thanks. That's a bit about Brian, a little bit about CPL. Let's kick things off now, Brian, with some of the questions that have come forward from your customers. There's obviously some people out there who think they have a sense of humour, or perhaps they think you have a sense of humour, Brian. I'm not sure which way it goes, but maybe you can comment on 2 or 3 quirky questions that have come forward. The first being, and I'll pull them all together, and I'm sure you'll smile at this. If you were chocolate, would you eat yourself, Brian? If you had one superpower, what would it be? And if you're an animal, Brian, what animal would you be?
Okay, so I went speed dating about 2.5 years ago, and I got asked those very questions. And that's not a joke.
Can you remember the answer?
Yeah, well,
has the answer changed?
I can't remember what answer I gave then because I'd probably had about 5 pints. But yeah, that was a funny evening. I went with a pal of mine. Oh, she was just such a good laugh. Anyway, if I was chocolate, would I eat myself? Only if it was 70% plus cocoa, because my diet is pretty good these days, and I'm not a mad fan of sugar. Superpower. Okay, so I'm going to bring this back to business.
I thought it would be golf, Brian.
No.
Okay.
I've never had a hole in one in my life.
Okay.
I always step up to a party and go, today's the day. It never happens. I would say my superpower is seeing possibilities where other people don't. The one thing in my life, and I tell you, bring us back to business. The one thing in my life that has always driven me, sometimes surprised me, is my ability to see an opportunity in something. So I was at a conference yesterday and I was listening to everything. It was a leaseholder conference down south. I was listening to everyone was saying, and every single time something's going on, and we'll touch on this later on actually probably, I'm sitting there looking, going, I could fix that. I could fix that. I could fix that. So I have this kind of, I don't know.
Do you think you can teach that? Did you learn it from somebody?
I think it's inbuilt.
I think you're probably right.
Right. So we need to, actually, I should have talked about Clifton Strengths. We can get onto it later on. And if you want, because this is a quirky question, I don't want to spend hours on it. You know me, I could talk for Scotland and the rest of the country. So animal, I would say an elephant. Okay. Trust and respect. I've written it down because I knew you were asking that. Trust and respect. And so when we come on probably to talk about, I guess, my culture and all of that sort of thing and what drives me, trust and respect comes into a huge amount of it.
Yep. Good.
So there you go.
Okay, that's the nonsense ones out the way.
Who asked the question about the chocolate?
Well, no, that stays with me, Brian. That won't be revealed.
Okay.
But thanks for joining in the fun. I think it was fun, unless these were actually serious questions from your customers, Brian. If they were,
which animal
that's a bit concerning.
Be?
Anyway, listen, let's move on to something a bit more interesting. Let's look at some general business issues and general business questions that your customers have put to you. And the first one comes from Gordon Douglas. And Gordon asks, what is the best advice you've been given? Okay, so I mentioned there's quite a few, but okay, I mentioned Ian Knox, and I'd worked for the same guy for 15 years, and Ian was a breath of fresh air when I went to work for him. And he had a couple of phrases. The first 2 of these are the phrases that he taught me. One of them
which he used all the time with me, and that is the rule book. Now, he said that he was a fairly blunt man. The rule book is for the guidance of the dim and the interpretation of the bright. Okay, basically meaning, read something and decide what you want to do with it. You don't need to follow everyone. Be a leader. You don't need to follow the rule book. Don't do that. And I'm pretty much lived my life like that anyway. I started along with other people, started a legal software company from scratch with no funding in a recession. I mean, who the fuck does that, right? Who would start a factoring business today with no funding? But people do it. Well, okay, they probably get their funding from elsewhere, but so I've always been one of those people who's never really followed a mold. So there's that one. There's also the one which he taught me and then regretted it the following day, and that is ask for forgiveness, not permission. So, unless you're going to do something really fucking stupid, just go and do it. And if it doesn't work out, then ask for forgiveness afterwards. Yeah. I haven't told my children that one, by the way. So
it sounds like there's been a couple of people who've been influential in your life, and you've picked bits out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as we've discussed before, there's sometimes bits that you pick out that you think, no, that's not for me. But there's bits that are for you, and these are things that are resonating with you.
Life is about learning all the way through to me. It's all about, personal development, professional development is massive. You should learn. I mean, I read a lot as well. So, and the other one that I learned to my detriment, and that is, you can change someone's technical ability, but you cannot change their attitude and their personality. So when someone walks in a door and you go, they don't fit, they're never going to fit, no matter what you do.
Did it take you a while to work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That one cost me dearly in my early years.
So you maybe thought, as a younger businessman, you thought you could mold staff into the way that you wanted, but what your view is, your personality is your personality. You've developed that in your early years, and by the time you're in your early 20s, you're not going to change much. You can learn, you can adapt, but you're not really going to change that personality.
Absolutely. I'll give you a very quickly. So one of the things I did during COVID was I became a Clifton strengths coach. Now, this is about profiling, okay? Now, Clifton, you basically do your half-hour questions, and there's 34 strengths, and it gives you a top 5, okay? So, gives you your top 34, to be fair. The stuff at the top is the stuff you should work on every day. If there's something at the bottom, it's just not you, why would you work at it? You know what I mean? And people used to say, oh, well, your strengths are this and your weaknesses are this, so let's work on your weaknesses. Why would you do that? Get other people in your organization that can do this stuff. You do the stuff up here. And that's when I remember coming out, what age was I? 51, 52, when I did this course. And I came out of it, and at the end, we had to say what we thought of the course, and it was all remote, which was weird and horrible as well. But anyway, it worked. It was a 5-day course, and the thing that was absolutely prevalent in my head at the when I came out of the course, when asked, was, how the bloody hell have I got to 55 and not known this stuff? Do you know what I mean? Because it's there or thereabouts, but someone had taken it and put it into this absolute kind of strict way that I could understand.
And looking back, do you think if you had that information, if you'd been on that sort of interactive course prior to that, you'd have changed the way you
absolutely. I mean, absolutely. We Clifton strength every single person before we employ them to find out what their strengths are, because someone can come across as something, but we get them to take the test before. I mean, we do it when they're getting to third interview. Which is effectively final, and we Clifton strength to see where they fit in. Because the person who introduced me to Clifton was a sales director I had in a previous business, and the reason he did it was, he said, I test them to see how close they are to me. Now, it is impossible. My eldest son, who's a mathematician, once told me what the chance of everyone having the same top 5 is out of 34. I can't do that answer in my head, but he did. Right. And this guy said to me, and this was my first introduction to Clifton, and a business coach later on told me what a lot of shit it was. And he said, oh, I Clifton everyone so that I can make sure if they're as close to me as possible, then I'll employ them. Now that assumes that you're the best at everything.
Yeah,
That assumes you're the best salesperson. When in fact you're absolutely not. Sorry, Tom, I'm nowhere near my mic.
But it's recognizing that.
Yeah, it is.
Realizing that's not for you, but bring people in who can fill that gap.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Gordon Douglas comes up with his next question. He refers to winding the clock back. I don't know what age Gordon is, but it's years since
because he works for you.
Years since I've ever heard of it and never seen anybody winding the clock back. But I think you know what. I think we both know what it means. If you could, what would you change, if anything, and why would that be?
Okay, so personally, I did not develop myself at all in business or in anything until probably business-wise, probably about 5 to 10 years ago. Personally, probably very, very recently, within the last 5 years. I mean, these days, I'm 55. I'm probably in the best shape of my life.
Brian, you've referred to your age about 8 times. Is there an issue going on here that we should know about? No.
I just talk about it a lot. I'm 55. Again, that's
He's
nice.
55.
That's nice. And I PT 3 times a week. Health and sport and keeping myself fit are huge things to me, and that's not something I ever thought would be the case. Certainly wasn't. I mean, don't get me wrong, I played badminton, I played tennis and stuff like that when I was younger, but that kind of regime, and that's what I meant about work-life balance when I mentioned it earlier. That is now a big thing to me. It's taking the time out to do these things, and I think, God, I'm going to mention it again. I think as you get older, it becomes more important to do these things.
Do you feel a responsibility to instill that in your staff as well? You're obviously leading from the top. You think work-life balance is important.
Absolutely.
Health is important.
Absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
something that should filter down through the organisation.
Without a doubt. And be every day in your culture as well.
Yeah.
And from a business perspective, when I first started out, I was reading an article about this, actually, how bad HR is, earlier in the Sunday Times it's an article from the Sunday Times when it's come up on the plane. My professional development in my first job was going in annually to be told what my pay rise is. Okay, that is what it was. And now, we have a people and culture director, Helen, who I've known for about 6 or 7 years. She was in a previous business, and then she came into CPL, 2.5, 3 years ago. I've known her for about 6 or 7 years. And in those days, CPL had 12 people, maybe slightly more, 12, 14, 15, something like that. For 15 people, companies do not have P&C directors. It just doesn't happen. Yep. I've said this to people and they've gone, what? Why was that your next hire? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Why was it my next hire? That's all about the team. It's about the culture. It's about the staff. So I think that's one thing that I would absolutely change. But hey, P&C wasn't even a word that people used, when I was in my early career. But I think I would definitely think more about how that affects me and business.
Yeah. But you're right. Going back to your early days, P&C wasn't around. There was no such thing as an HR department. People you had somebody nominated in your staff who dealt with staff. Yeah. And that was kind of it. And it was a whole gambit. It was everything from dealing with salaries to time off. There was no dedicated HR function. Yeah. But that obviously is a very important component in it.
Absolutely. So I think that's what I would say.
Okay. Brian McManus would like to know, Brian, what are you most proud of in terms of the team and the business culture? And we've mentioned culture already, so that's an important thing to you as well. What are you most proud of in relation to the team and the business culture that you have engendered?
Okay, so this is where I do get a bit of grief from. I have a few sayings that I use to describe this, and I say this openly in front of my team. My directors probably, in fact, I think they.
Are you going to swear again, Brian?
Yes, probably. Oh, they did probably. Okay. They probably did look away when I said this. We do. So okay, let me do right. So one-to-ones and everything like that, to me, are a given. Everyone should be doing that. Okay, but we have job scorecards for every single one of our team members, which says this is your job, this is what you should do. We have check-ins on a one-to-one. We have check-ins and one-to-ones on a regular basis. We huddle every morning. Every single.
Sorry, can you explain that? Huddle.
Right. So this is that term. So every single person in the business meets every morning for about 4 or 5 minutes within a huddle, and they talk about, what did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? And what are my roadblocks?
Every person?
Every person. So, and what happens is, so I mean, I don't like saying the people here and here, but you have hierarchy in a business, right? So everyone huddles here, then everyone huddles here, and then everyone huddles
it's not in the same room at the same
no,
time?
No, obviously not, because we're a remote business. but they do it on Teams in a room team. So, and then the whole point of it is that the senior leadership team know of any issues, whether that's with staff, customers, anything going on, by the time the 9:45 huddle happens, which is SLT.
Now, that, so as to interrupt, that might seem a bit repetitive to me, doing that on a daily basis. Clearly, you don't think so. You think there's something to be gained from it every day?
Absolutely, because then everyone in your team knows if you're struggling, if you need help, and what's happened the day before. So, I mean, it's like you see. In fact, I saw one this morning when I walked through Heathrow. There's 5 guys, because they're normally stand-ups if you do them. And if you've ever gone to a hotel and been sitting at breakfast and seen these guys, the manager standing up, they used to call them stand-ups. What do they call them in development? So this comes from a software development point of view of, do I have any roadblocks in software development? And the name, God, age is a terrible thing. The name escapes me what they call it. Will come back to me. But everyone huddles, right? And then we also do monthly all hands. So everyone gets on Teams and we have a social kind of event as well as an update. We send a Friday email. A Friday CEO email goes out, talks about what's going on. We do sprint reviews every 2 weeks, which is basically the entire business finding out what we've developed over the last 2 weeks so that everyone knows what's going. So it's just, especially if you're a remote business, it's very, very difficult to keep everyone.
So how much of this, Brian, is down to your line of thought? How much of this has come from others?
Okay, so
it's come from Clifton, for example?
It's not,
or have you put your own stamp on it?
Well, we have put our own stamp on it, but there's many, many growth kind of methodologies out there. There's scaling up and there's metronomics, there's all of these sort of things, okay? I learned this in the previous business, the legal software business I had, and you do this to grow, okay? And we are a growth business. I mean, we just launched in England and the rest of the UK outside Scotland. You know, we're growing in Scotland with other products. So it's a way of making sure you have a fully cohesive team. Okay. And that is a big part of scaling a business. Okay. So, and very quickly, so we do a monthly all hands, we do a quarterly strategy meeting where the senior leadership team meet. And because we're remote, all of our teams meet twice a year. Once is an entire business one. It's done in January where we do the kickoff for the year, and each department, or I guess director, head, whoever looks at all the team a director looks after, meet separately as well once in the summer. Yeah. So we do all of these sort of things, but it's all about developing people as well and looking. So we have Thrive projects where we're looking for everybody's next job. You know, where are you going in the business? What are your career prospects and all of these sort of things. Okay, so that is the bit that I talk about a lot. Okay. But I come back to the bit about having someone in your business that fits. There's a couple of phrases in my mind. Tom's going to freak out because he knows what these are.
He's heard them before, hasn't he?
Yeah,
regularly.
Yeah. Now, these are all stolen, okay? These are all stolen. These are things. Now
these repeated in the huddle?
No. These are just, no, definitely not repeated. I think that people probably repeat them and go, because I remember when I said it in January and you know, that we had this phenomenal end to my section about motivation, but this is just who I am, Neil. So I can't fake it. I can't fake it. Right. So this came from someone at Apple. I'm absolutely sure. Better have a hole than an asshole. Okay. Meaning you'd rather have a vacant position in your business than have an asshole in it. And I think everyone would agree with it. They'd probably use a slightly different way to say it. And the next one, actually, this one came from one of my children was having an interview for a job down south, because they're both south now. They're both London. They're based London, Portsmouth. And he walked in and he said, "So can you tell me a bit about the culture of the business?" Yeah. And the guy turned around to him and he says, "Do you know something? I'll not tell you which son it was. Do you know something? That's really simple. We just don't employ pricks." Now, it's the same thing, right? You get, okay, it's probably, I mean, people will be offended by the use of these terms and stuff like that. But hey, I am who I am. And they resonate with me massively. because they're saying the same thing. Bring people. Why would you bring someone into your organization who's just going to annoy everybody else? And if you've got a prima donna in your organization, they may be amazing at what they do, but they piss everyone else off. Why would you want to have them? Yeah.
No.
So
it's a team game, isn't it, Brian?
Yeah.
And everybody's going to be
There's
playing
no
for the same team.
No,
absolutely not.
But
So what you've built and the culture that you've built around that is obviously hugely important to you, and that seems to be something that you're very proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people can do volunteering days. They do. I mean, we have an annual charity. In fact, we just this morning did a podcast with the charity because I did a zip wire over the Clyde the other week.
How did that go?
I was terrified, but I survived, obviously, because I'm here. But so there's all of this sort of stuff, and that costs money. Because if people are away doing volunteering days and we do PDPs, like personal development plans, people get time to go and work on other stuff. They're not developing software, they're not supporting clients, they're not doing this, which means you need to increase the number of people you have to cover all of that sort of stuff. That to me, 10 years ago was completely alien.
So that's all very positive stuff. John Borthwick wants to know, what are your bugbears in business, Brian?
Oh God. Okay. People who lie. Okay. So trust and respect are a huge thing for me in business, and not only everywhere. Your customers, your competition, your staff, your everything. To me, I spoke about this on LinkedIn, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago. And in fact, David Dorn and I had a bit of a chuckle about it because I launched it. I said this on LinkedIn about 2 days before I had a meeting with him. And it's EBS, so equal business stature. Okay, what it means is customer, supplier, you have the same standing in a meeting. Yeah. And it's all about respect. So when Tom, who's behind the camera today, by the way, when Tom goes and spends, I don't know, 4 hours with someone doing a demonstration, then spends 2 hours on the phone, and then spends a couple of hours putting a proposal together and sends it to someone, then that person doesn't respond or won't take the call or won't talk to him. That's disrespectful. And okay, maybe it's just that, maybe nobody else would agree with this. Maybe I need to stop saying maybe it's an age thing. But to be fair, it's just respect. Yeah. So to me, lying, and you see it all the time. You used to see it in legal software. You can spot someone lying a mile off if you're face to face. Maybe not on Teams, but you can spot it a mile off. So just tell the truth. If you can't do something, say no. Don't lie about something to further your own agenda, because you will get caught, because you will forget. You will forget. Absolutely. You've lied. Absolutely. I mean, I saw this in a TV program once. The person being asked the question by the policeman is asked to tell the story. So he tells the story. Policeman says, "Now tell me it backwards." Guy can't do it because it's not real life. It didn't happen. So he has no concept of how that looks backwards.
But you're right. They give themselves away, these people, don't they? And you can spot.
Yeah. And so to me, it's all about trust and respect in business, and they are my personal values as well. Yeah. So that's what I think.
Gordon Buchanan. I'm sorry to raise the subject of golf. I don't know if this is it's not an emerging theme. It seems to be a theme that's been out there quite a lot. Anyway, the question from Gordon centres around your success in business. So it appears, to Gordon Buchanan anyway, that you've been successful in business. Brian, what's the motivation? Why keep going? Is there a time that you think, time's up now, it's time to hand on to somebody else, time to try something different, time to play more golf?
Okay. I guess the question is, what's success? What does success look like? And I think that's probably different to everybody else. Tom hates it when I talk about insight, so he's probably cringing behind the camera. He does. He's nodding. He bought me a T-shirt, by the way, going, ask me about the company I used to own, because in meetings I go, I used to own this business. I used to own this business. So when we sold Insight Jan 23, it did cross my mind, and that's what I guess they're alluding to in this question.
Yeah.
I did for about a couple of months ago, because I mean I used to be really big on LinkedIn, just fell off a cliff. I'd stopped doing a whole raft of stuff when that happened, because I was like, what do I do? Do I give it up and play golf? Right. I mean, the jokey answer is I'm shit at golf, so I don't think I get any better. So I'm definitely not stopping to that. Do I'd be bored? I'm passionate about what I do. I love what I do. That's another one of my personal values, is passion. You've got to be passionate about what you do. And I'm really lucky that I get to do something that I really enjoy. And what's that phrase someone once used? I mean, it's not, probably someone would have a negative to this, but enjoy what you do and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, the sentiment is there, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, you're clearly passionate about it. And it seems to me that there's perhaps no demarcation between your passion for life, your passion for business, your liveliness for business and life. It all just seems to roll together. And that happens to be the whole of Brian Welsh. Sometimes he's doing this, sometimes he's doing that, sometimes he's at business. There's no demarcation of saying, and it's not a 9-to-5 thing, that I'm at business at that point and then I'll switch off and then I'll do that. And as you know, as a business owner, you just don't.
No,
off.
Absolutely.
You don't switch off. You would probably like to switch off at some time,
yeah.
But I just don't think as a business owner that enables you to do that.
I try it. I manage it a lot more now than I used to manage it. But it was Will, in fact, our CTO. So a couple of months after Insight was sold, he came, because I mean we've been made. I mean, you know this. You'll be approached, all the time to sell your business, right? I'm no different, right? It's a decent business. We've got decent recurring revenue. We've got a phenomenal product, and and it's only getting better and better as time goes by. So, you get offers, and Will approached me. He said, "Are you going to sell?" And someone had approached me, and I was chatting to them at the time because I was like, what will I do? I made money over here, so I just get rid of this and then go and do something else. And he didn't convince me, because I don't think I was ever going to do it. But he said, come on, let's have a crack at going into England again. Now, that was 2.5 years ago. And about 12, 18 months ago, we started our growth plan, and the CPL grew from 12, 15 people to 32, 33 that we are today. That was for a number of reasons, because we wanted to, we needed to keep supporting our clients in Scotland, because they pay our wages and keep our business going. But we also needed to employ these people to build the English product as well. So I don't think see, this is the problem. I don't see it as success. I don't know why. It's just not something I actually see it as. I just see it as something that I do, I'm passionate about, and I'll continue to be passionate.
And let others decide if that's successful, which obviously the question relates around success. But you drive it. You must realise in a quiet moment, yes, there is success. You must smile at some point and accept that you've built a good, robust business. You're employing people. You're providing a great culture around the business. But again, that's probably not entirely what is satisfying you. You probably just want to keep going and going. And you've talked about England, and we'll move on to that. I think as business owners, sometimes we don't actually sort of sit down and give ourselves a pat on the back and say, you've done quite well there, son. But
you're right.
If you did that, Brian, maybe you wouldn't have that continuing motivation just to keep that going.
Maybe I don't know. Have I been successful? If you measure success in, and I had some great guys who work with me. If you over the years, if you measure success as building a property factoring software business that services 95% of the private market in Scotland, yes, it's success. If you measure success as building a legal software business from basically 0 to 3 million quid of annual recurring revenue, with 1,000 clients, and then someone coming in and going, I'd like to buy that, then yes, I guess you could.
And success to some people might be something completely different. It might be having that work-life balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
It might be providing a service for somebody. It's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Brian, let's move on to something that I know you're very passionate about, the factoring industry.
Yeah.
and a number of the questions obviously come in from your factoring clients. And John Walker has raised a really interesting topic that is top of most people's agenda at the moment, certainly as far as I'm aware in the factoring industry, and it relates to AI. And John's question centres around an increasing interaction with clients using AR. And John says that they are encountering extremely long-winded AI-generated essays, much of which, as he describes, are absolutely fact-free slop, designed to fit whatever narrative the author's seeking to impose. And unfortunately, John feels that as property factors, under the legislation and particularly Code of Conduct, that he has an obligation to reply, and it's becoming very, very time-consuming. And also, John feels that they're not able to rely on their own AI to simply batter out a response to it. And what he thinks is worse is that they can spend hours carefully crafting their own response, not using AI, only to have more things batted back at them within 10 or 15 minutes from something that's AI generated. And John's interested to hear your thoughts on how you think the industry can adapt to that, how you can help the industry adapt to it, and what John refers to as an increasingly unpleasant future.
Wow. Okay. Right. So that is a real issue, and it's not just the factoring industry. Everybody's using. I mean, you can spot a ChatGPT or AI generated post on LinkedIn.
Well, that's interesting. You saying you said you can spot it.
Yeah, I think you can spot it. Well, maybe not everyone. But you're if you're used to getting 5 words from a client to say, I don't know, there's a leak in the roof, and then you get this big long thing, then you're going to be able to spot the ones that are.
Yep.
I mean, okay, so I need to flip this on its head a wee bit, okay? Because at the end of the day, we cannot stop people doing that. Well, okay, we could. You could have a written statement of service that says you must put your any queries or any comments or issues or requests to our business in this form, and that form only allows 20 characters in that field. You could do that if you really want to do that, okay? But flipping it on its head, really what's required in that is then to have something that reads that AI and pulls out the pertinent points to it, and you have a tool where you can go and find information very quickly. Okay, blatant the sales pitch here.
Sorry, can I stop you? You're talking about finding the information.
Yeah.
That's not somebody's interpretation. That's not somebody's opinion of the situation, of the subject matter. That's just a factual situation that you're going to find the factual response.
Yeah, you've got to pick the relevant points out of the email that's come in, or however it's come in. You've got to pick the relevant points out of there. I mean, otherwise, you're never going to be able to respond anyway. So there are AI tools that can do that for you.
Okay.
They can pick the relevant things out, right? So what I need to answer, then you go to something, and this is the blatant sales pitch. So we have a product called a Systemo, which somewhere in our business name, I'm not sure who, we put it out to vote. And it's effectively a bot where you can go in and go, tell me what the debt in that development is, or tell me, you can take it to an AGM and what's the last 10 things that happened at this site and all this sort of stuff, which is in beta at the moment, and it'll be shipped shortly. So you could use that to get your answer, to then respond to that email, and hence cutting down the time required to respond to that person who's asked you the question. Okay. And hopefully that will then give them the factual information they need to then stop then bombarding another email back to you. Yeah. There's nothing to stop what they're going to write. The job of a software company like CPL is to, I mean, I don't have a view that AI will ever replace property managers or anything like that. I have a view that it's assisting rather than replacing.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is the will of the person on the other side, then my job as a software provider is to give John and anyone else in the industry the tools to be able to deal with that as quickly as possible and in as factually as possible and a customer services way as possible.
And you're developing that software, or it's out there at the moment?
Systemo is in beta to get the information. Yeah, the lifting that and grabbing the facts out of it is on our roadmap for development. So,
but too early to say too much about it.
Too early to say. But a Systemo is it's in beta and it will be going out shortly.
Okay, Mark Abram asks, with the changes in legislation in England, and you've referenced England, and we'll come on to that later, Brian, looking like, in his opinion, moving more towards a factoring way of working, do you see possibilities for traditional factoring firms in Scotland to diversify into England? You've mentioned that you're making that leap forward, or have done. Do you think there's a case for the Scottish property factors selling as wares south of the border?
I don't know. Are you planning on buying any management companies in England? Don't answer. Don't answer that. I shouldn't have asked that. Okay, so common hold is not new. Okay, common hold has been around since about 2002 in England.
Yep.
The problem is it's just not actually had much of an uptake. But the difference is that now that there's so much negativity around leasehold and everything else that's happening in that English market, common hold is becoming a possible future way of working.
Yep.
However, there are still some pretty fundamental differences between the way people do things in Scotland and the way people do things in England. One being that service charge will still exist. Okay, service charge is a very English way of block managers running. I mean, that's how they financially ingather funds. Now, you have a form of that in Scotland, which is budgeted. Okay, but it is different to is different to the way England works. And one of the biggest differences is in England on a service charge, you can have 5 different funds, 5 different bank accounts, 5 different this, 5 different that. That does not exist in Scotland. Okay, some people in Scotland have separate bank accounts per different bank accounts per development. I mean, excuse my French, but fuck, I came across someone 2 years ago who didn't even separate a client bank account from the firm's bank account. How long has legislation been in Scotland saying you have to do that? I mean, you know, there are some fundamental differences here. And the other thing is as well, in England, under common hold, I'm pretty sure you'll still have to have some sort of entity, whether that's a residents association or whatever, that then files accounts for that development.
Yep.
That doesn't exist in Scotland. That's never existed in Scotland. So actually the way in the fundamentals about tenure and the fundamentals about how the industries work are entirely different. However, it does open up the Scottish factors, because they understand common hold better, to move down there.
Yeah.
However, I mean, I was at a leasehold conference in Birmingham yesterday with Tom, and the other thing it'll do is open up Scotland as somewhere for the English to come up to.
It sounds as if it would be a bit of an easier jump or leap of faith for a software provider to go from Scotland to England than it would be for somebody in the factoring industry. You're selling a product which you can adapt from a factoring point of view. It's more than that. It's a service. It's a people thing, and governed by different rules and different legislation.
Yeah. But from a software perspective, then yes, we have a lot of experience as a company in common hold and how that works. But the other thing to talk about, and this is where, so there are a couple of English providers, software companies who work in Scotland. Okay, and there are a number who have tried over the years to come north of Hadrian's Wall and sell to companies in Scotland. In fact, you guys have looked at a couple of them over the years as well. And the one fundamental thing you have to understand is there is a rule of thumb that my old sales director taught me, a guy called Jerry Buchan, who I've known for many, many, many years. I haven't seen him recently, but I've known him for many, many years. And he said to me, he's got a rule of thumb that Scotland is 10% the size of England. Okay. So why the hell would an English software company develop something that they can sell to 10 people rather than selling to 100 people? Okay. And that is kind of, and okay, there's an understanding also of how the market works, which you have to have in your head and understand how the Scottish market can work. But what has kept them south of the border so many times is the fact that it's such a small market.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the working up here is so different. The fees up here are less as well. You know what I mean? So software in England is way more expensive.
I can't see a huge attraction for English firms coming into Scotland.
But for going the other way, the market's 10 times the size.
Of course, so why wouldn't you? If that's in your game plan, if that's how you want to build your business.
And service charge is a variation of budgeted. I mean, the fundamentals are there. Okay, the fund management and all of that, the banking management and all of that is entirely different. And there are many, many nuances and differences between the two markets, but certainly going from Scotland to England is a lot easier. But hey, it's taken us a couple of years to write the product.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that the Commonwealth situation, and there's the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act that went through in 2024 in the UK, still to be implemented.
Yeah, because phase two, I mean, it's gone through, but a lot of it's not.
Most of it isn't through yet.
Yeah, because phase two of that needs to go through.
And then conversely in Scotland, with work through the Tenement Maintenance Working Group and work being done by the Scottish Law Commission for Scottish Government and looking at changes in legislation. On both sides of the border, there's potentially big changes ahead, but I'm not sure that these changes should necessarily hold anybody back from entering new markets, from going either side of the wall, as you put it, going north or south. But you've made that leap anyway. We'll come on to talk about that, Brian. Okay. Your role of CPL in the wider industry, Brian, what do you think could be done to better promote, and now onto factoring industry? We've talked enough about your software industry. Let's stick to factoring here. What do you see your role and the role of CPL in looking at the wider factoring industry? What could be done to better promote the industry as a whole?
Okay, so that's a big question, because at the end of the day, you alluded to this right at the beginning. I'm a software provider. I'm not in this day to day. But having lived in the market for many, many years, we are at kind of cutting edge of fully automating the industry. And I think we can affect change in there. So the number one thing here is transparency. Yeah. I've long held this view that I want to create a full circle digital solution for the industry, right? So it's got transparency so that one of your clients knows when someone's going to arrive to do X. Yeah. One of your clients can go and have a look at the invoice and have a look at everything that's happening within their development and all these sort of things. And AI is going to help with this at some point as well, because you're going to be able to, the way we talk about a system O helping a property manager to find information. I mean, what's the difference between then supplying that to a client, one of your clients? Always get muddled with the word client, whose client? Okay, but the one thing that has always been a big thing for me is trust in factors. Now, this comes from years and years and years and years ago. I was sitting at dinner, I can't remember where, and there was a person sitting beside me, and they were an accountant, quite a high up accountant in a very well established and well respected firm. And they asked me what I did for a living. And I said, oh, I work with Property Factors. Oh God, I've got Property Factor XYZ, and I've been paying them all this money for years. And then suddenly something needs fixed in the courtyard and they want more cash for it. And I'm just looking at this person going,
yeah, that's right. It does.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Now, I'm not suggesting that this person should know more than a layman or somebody who does another job, but I'm sorry. How on earth can someone who's an accountant and a senior in a business not understand that? So that, for one thing, always made me realize that actually the education piece is a big piece, okay? And that's one of the reasons for doing Blocktalk podcast. That's one of the reasons for doing this. Now, I don't know do I know what the listenership of this is? Do most of them just all of your competitors listening when you're on and you listening when one of your other competitors on? I don't know. But if we can affect change, and actually we are doing that. I mean, I think this podcast does affect change. I think it gets the right people around a table to collaborate and talk. Now, there's a whole raft of stuff that, you guys just get on with, but there's problems that I have to fix with software that I go, this cannot happen. This should not be happening. Yeah. And that way, hopefully we get a conversation happening and we can affect some change. Yeah.
Well, I think the industry, I'm giving you a applaud here. I think the industry, Brian, understand that and welcome it, because despite the private factoring industry being represented previously by the Property Managers Association, now TPI Scotland, other areas of housing involving management are represented by other bodies. But I'm not aware that any one person or one entity has brought the number of people that you brought around the table to have these conversations. And when you started your podcast 5 years ago, is it now?
Yeah,
that was certainly the message that I took from it, that you wanted to have a conversation, invite people into that conversation and influence change.
Yeah.
I think it's taken you a while to get there, not a criticism, just a matter of fact, because your podcasts are regular. I think it's taken you a while to get there, but I see more recently that you're having key people in the industry, key people who interact with the industry, people who partner with the industry. So you're gaining an understanding from all these other service providers by having them around the table, and people in the factoring industry are getting the opportunity to listen into that. And part of that, yes, is education. And you're right about your accountant, and you felt, well, there's a piece on education here. I would counter that by saying people need to embrace that and want to be educated. People buying a property, homeowners buying property, probably the biggest single investment, should want to know what the system is, and whether that's factoring, whether it's insurance, whether it's repairs, whether they have a factor or not. They've got to want to know that. And that's the biggest thing that I believe has not been overcome yet, of trying to get over that tipping point of saying to these homeowners, you need to understand this. You should want to understand this. And I don't know where you go with that, but certainly in some of your recent podcasts and bringing MSPs around the table, bringing TPI, who will absolutely have a major voice in the future in Scottish housing. I think that's a massive step, and it's hugely helpful. Interesting that it takes somebody from out with the industry to bring forward that conversation. Perhaps that's because in the industry, going back to your accountant, they didn't have a high regard for the industry, so it was perhaps difficult for that industry to engender that conversation. But you've certainly done that.
You articulated that much better than I could. But yes, but no, but just coming back to a couple of points. It's just about trying to get the conversation going, right? That is fundamentally what I'm trying to do, is just get people talking.
And do you have any other plans for that, Brian? Is this just an ongoing conversation? Are you excited with where the conversation has gone? Have you got, for example, guests coming on to your podcast that you perhaps a couple of years ago didn't think they would be of relevance to the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll come on to a wee bit to talk about. It's a question that the MSPs come into. Did I ever think for a second I would have two MSPs on here? No. But I'll tell you the one thing, right? So there is stuff missing. I mean, the cladding remediation and all of this sort of stuff, you guys have got all of that sort of stuff handled. I'm talking about process. I'm talking about making sure that things work properly. And I'll give you a real example today. I'm not sure I should actually do this, but I'm in the middle of buying a flat, right? In Glasgow. The estate agent, who I know extremely well, is messaging me all the time going, can we set an entry date? Can we set an entry date? Can we set an entry date? Can we get Mrs. Concluded? Can we get Mrs. Concluded? And I'm still waiting for a fucking answer from the factor. Now, that's not because the factor's not answered it. Yeah. That's because the other side has not asked the question, probably. Yeah. So, and that's the frustration. There's, when someone's buying a flat, Neil, what's the most exciting thing about that I've got about buying that flat? Going and buying a sofa. Going, oh, I can put that painting on that wall. I'm really looking forward to making chicken katsu curry, which I learned to make last week at a cooking thing in my kitchen. I'm not thinking about the factor. Yeah, that's the problem. There's this excitement about the buying a flat, even when you've bought houses before. They're not thinking about it, and that's the challenge. And I'm sitting here knowing, going, I want this answer because I understand this industry. Yeah. Yep. If that was someone who doesn't understand the industry, but great. Earliest point of entry, please, because I'm so excited about buying my flat.
Correct, because all these material things and these lifestyle things are far more important at that point of somebody signing up for that flat so they don't really want to know about the bad stuff. So that's just going to be a bit of an impediment to them. So they kind of put that to one side. Yeah, but education that's just going to be an ongoing thing. If you could change one thing about the factoring industry, Brian, not restricting you to one, but hey, if there was one thing that you would change in the factoring industry, or maybe we've covered that already in terms of legislation.
So I've got two. Okay. So the one, something that's become very apparent. It comes back to this purchase and sale thing. One thing that's become very apparent in the whole conversation that we had. So Paul Sweeney, Mark Griffin, April 6th and April 8th, I think, this year, Times, factoring's a racket, all of this sort of stuff. So we spent a lot of time trying to get those two in to sit around a table and talk about it. So these haven't gone out yet, I don't think, but they'll go very shortly. So we had Derek McDonald, Mark Griffin, and we had David Doran and Paul Sweeney having a conversation. First question I asked Paul was, what do you mean by racket? He said, well, it's a provocative term. So, and I said it because, hey, I'm sitting on a podcast with a property factor now, right? But there was a fundamental that the reason he said it was because he's hearing from MSPs, factoring. Okay. So I get a couple of people in the podcast, don't think this one's gone out yet either, talking about title deeds and these sort of things, okay? And we just talk about and I can never remember, is it 10, 11 or 12 points on that questionnaire that gets sent from a solicitor to and then, so we were talking about that and talking about how good that was. And that's, it's miles beyond where the industry was 10 years ago. Okay. But then I speak to David in this podcast with Paul Sweeney, and there's a fundamental thing that's missing. There is a question that's not being asked. And that question is, there's a question that says, is there any ongoing maintenance, or is there any ongoing proposed works, or is there any ongoing anything, to do with the property? No, there's not. A year ago, we went out to get a quote to replace the roof, and we came back with a price of £250,000. The owner said no. That answer does not need to be given on that form because the question isn't asked. Have there been any? Now, you would think that logic would dictate you would put it on, and David said, at the time he would. But, if you weren't managing that property 2 years ago or a year ago and you're filling in that form, you're not going to know. And you may not have a software system like CPL, sorry, Tom, which is now called, that actually tells you this information. So you're providing that information to the solicitor who's going back to the next solicitor, and then someone's making a decision on that. Now, there was a raft of other stuff in those times, reports like people getting charged shitloads of money for portals and stuff like that. I mean, and not getting written statement of service within the timeframes and all of this sort of stuff. So given that's thought, but this is just one fundamental thing. So if there's one thing that this podcast can do is to get the people around the table to talk about these things and go, do you know, right, we need to ask another question. And we interviewed Mike Guthrie, who I think is on the Property Standardization Forum or something like that. I can't remember what it's actually called. And he sits on that. So, you know, if we can get him around the table, it was with Jacqueline Borthwick from the Property Facts Professional, get those two around the table with other people. Let's change the bloody form and ask the question.
I think the podcast is probably a good catalyst for TPI, who, as we've covered already, venturing into Scotland and widening the conversation even more, Brian, because you've referenced a letter from a solicitor. And that template that you've referenced was promoted by the Scottish the Law Society, which has changed back and forward over the years. And yes, there was a direct question in the one that you've referenced that required a direct answer. And you mentioned David would have added something to it. But you'll find that in some situations, the response to giving that extra information could be, we didn't ask you for that information, so can you please give us another letter that doesn't respond to that? Now, that's not helping anybody
well,
at all.
It's hiding. It's fundamentally hiding something.
So there's the Law Society that needs to be involved in the conversation. RICS need to be involved in the conversation. My understanding is that they're not too keen on reviewing the home report. There is so much in the home report that does not help that purchaser that you referenced trying to buy a property who doesn't really want to know about the bad stuff, but really should know about it. And that home report, along with something more intentional from, in this case, it would be the factor through the selling and purchasing solicitors that would provide far more information. Homes for Scotland representing new house builders. So there's a raft of people that need to join this conversation. So like you, I'm excited that you've got an MSP and a property factor around the table with a software provider, but I think that needs to be extended. And
it does. But at the end of the day, if I start the conversation and then I speak to TPI or I speak to whoever, then hopefully we can then get those people round the table to discuss it. The other thing that was really interesting when Mark Griffin was talking was that he's bought 2 properties in the last, 10 years or whatever. I can't actually remember. And the first time he bought a property that had a factor, his solicitor wrote him an email and followed up with a phone call to say, this is all the things that you need to think about from a factoring point of view. Okay. The second time, the solicitor just sent him the response. Now, who's the expert? I don't know. I mean, which one's right? Maybe the first guy went beyond what he's meant to happen, but there's a difference. There is a disparity between those 2 experiences. Whichever one of them is right, I mean, is really immaterial here. I mean, you would hope that the first one was the right one, but you know, if I walk into a solicitor's office and I'm paying a solicitor to do that conveyance for me, I want to know that solicitor's going to look after me from a whatever the hell's going to happen from a factoring point of view. Yep. And I'm not entirely sure that happens, to be honest.
Now, if I pick you up correctly, Brian, you're saying that the 2 MSPs that you've had, and they probably reflect what is happening out there amongst others, you're saying that they are hearing more and more issues relating to factoring. If I've picked you up correctly, is that the case? Are they hearing more and more? And if they are, yes, the factoring industry should be concerned about that. Why would they be hearing? I don't
see. This is the thing. It was a comment made by Paul, and he said, Paul Sweeney. He said, you know, factoring wouldn't have been on his radar if there wasn't an issue. He wouldn't have if he wasn't hearing things, wouldn't have been on his radar. Wouldn't have made that comment. Okay, so things are on his radar, but if they are, why? Okay, I mean, I'm not going to have a pop at an MSP in any way, shape, or form. I don't want to do that. But surely there's a place for that to be taken that's not the Times. Yeah, surely there's a place for that to be, you know, whether that be PMAS or whether that be TPI. Probably TPI have a massive more resource behind them than PMAS ever did. So, Property Managers Association being part of now TPI, or being TPI Scotland as part of TPI, is a massively is a great thing for everyone concerned. Homeowners, everybody, factors, homeowners,
Yeah.
I mean, education, everything. So, but for them, because they're hearing it, they perceive a problem. Now, if Property Managers Association Scotland or TPI don't know there's a problem, then how do you know what's going on?
I think that's where TPI are now going to delve into, Brian. I think they are, as I've said to me in the past, they look to identify the harm in the industry and for homeowners, and that's their starting point. They look for the harm. So the harm could be defective buildings, it could be expensive insurance. So their starting point is not to necessarily look after the factoring industry. It's to look after those who they represent, which is a really interesting turnaround from where the industry looked at itself. It's now looking beyond that. It's looking to represent not just the homeowner and the repair and maintenance, but going back to lifestyle, work-life balance. They're looking after the owner and their asset and how they can influence that and who they can bring into that conversation. So I think that will be an interesting one over the next year or two, just to see where that one goes. Brian, Jacqueline Borthwick, regular correspondent, I believe, with this podcast, is asking you as to what you think the biggest challenge for the factoring industry is in the next 2 or 3 years, and then we'll move on to talk more about CPL.
Okay. I think I'll answer this very quickly because I think we're going to cover it later on anyway. The biggest challenge is going to be AI. I think that is where the market is going to be taken. I read something, someone said something the other day. I can't remember where it was. AI is not going to replace property managers. However, businesses and property managers who embrace AI will probably replace those that don't. Yeah, because I think that's a very valid point. The advancement of AI, is phenomenally quick. Yeah, and we're coming on to the AI question, which I'll save another thing, because obviously there was we're recording this on Trump's in the UK. They're talking about the UK being an AI superpower. I mean, that's fucking great, but there's some fundamental things that need to happen for that to be allowed to happen as well. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's going to be AI. Yeah, without doubt. I'm a techie.
You're a tech guy, but you're also suggesting, or I'm reading into, the AI is this great positive initiative, but it must have negatives to it as well, Brian. I mean, for a short period of time, AI was the biggest risk to business in the UK. It's dropped down to 5th place in the recent survey through Allianz, one of the world's leading insurers, and dropped down to 10th place globally. So, only last year it was right up there as number one as being the biggest risk. And now are people adapting to it, Brian? Are people understanding more about it?
You ask 20 people in a room if they've used AI, and they'll all put their hand up probably. And then you ask them if any of them have used anything other than ChatGPT, and there's probably about one hand left. Yeah. So that's just a fact of life. But we all use it. I use it. My son is one of my sons is into AI, and he's got a master's degree and a master's in AI, and I phone him off often to go, can you just do this for me? Can you just do that for me? I've got to, and it's not.
Do you pay him?
No, he's had enough. Jesus God. This is maybe not work related. This is for other things. I just want to, go and tell me how many block managers there are in Ireland. Yeah, go and do a bit of work for me. So he's, both my kids are into tech.
And neither working with CPL. Why is that, Brian?
I wouldn't. Nah, that's just people who do. No, definitely not. They don't want to. Their aspirations and ambitions are not to take over.
Way beyond.
Well, yeah, no, I don't mean that. I just mean it's different. It's different. Yeah, they're both of their views on stuff are are entirely different. I'm not entirely, how do you, I mean, I've got a pal who works in tech, a good friend of mine. He's not working just now for various different reasons. And the easiest thing in the world would be for me to give him a job. Okay. And we'll think about everything I said about culture before. So all of these people that we employ they've got to get to a pretty high bar to work in this firm. And that may sound like a really arrogant thing to say, but they do. And suddenly I just give my kid a job. Nah, definitely not. Definitely not. It would go against every respect, trust, it would go against everything that I stand for. Yeah.
Okay. I hope you're watching us, boys, because you're not coming in here.
You're not getting a fucking job.
Let's talk about CPL, Brian.
Okay.
And Mark Abram has a question for you with the increased focus on customer service being driven by the press and MSPs, as we've spoken about. What are your plans for CPL to develop in this area? Is it to improve focus on the integration, or how do you see it going?
Okay, so there's two ways to do this. We write it, or we integrate with something that already does it. The customer service piece is probably predominantly what you would, I guess, term as some sort of CRM capability.
Yep.
Now, so we've spoken about being able to do read emails and give help with responses, these sort of things. Okay, I mean, that exists today in many, I mean, Salesforce does it, Zoho does it. These guys have got, I think Zoho in the last count have got 19,000 engineers around the world. I may be entirely wrong, it might be 900. But anyway, their AI involvement is moving at breakneck speed. Okay, so I would say both.
And so it's moving at breakneck speed just simply because of the volume, the number of engineers that they have. Is it as basic as that?
No, absolutely. They're forever creating new things that you can do. Yes, it's evolving very, very quickly because they have this capacity of engineering resource.
Yeah. And do you tap into that, Brian?
We can. Well, you would do with integration. So, if you want to, I mean, our product's already interfaced with Salesforce because we have a client who runs their customer service stuff through Salesforce, yep. So it integrates with CPL. You've got other clients who want to do all that themselves. So we need to do the best of both worlds. Now, would I ever create Outlook? No, because I don't have the resource of Microsoft. Okay, but for clients who want to have everything in one system and don't want to go and buy a Salesforce and don't want to go and buy a Zoho or whatever it is, then we need to make sure that we fundamentally provide that route to being able to respond to customers very, very quickly, whether that be with an AI assisted response, but also it's about giving clients transparency as well. So we have residence portals and all of residence apps and all of these sort of things where the homeowner, resident, whatever you want to call them, can view the information, can get all of the information that they need, whether it be by self-service or by asking the question. It's all about providing that information to the homeowner in as quick a time, in as readable a form, and also in a way in which they want to read it. And this is where AI is going to, I know we're going to have a conversation about AI later, but this is where AI is going to really come into its own. It's about, so I don't know about you, but when I listen to a podcast, I want to watch it as well. Yeah, I want to watch. I want to see the human element of it. Some people don't give a shit about that. They just want to listen to it. Yeah. So it's about being able to receive information in a way in which I want to receive information. And I think that in the future will be a big, big thing. I've probably digressed a wee bit there, but essentially, I think both. I think you need to cater. I mean, if you remember, or if I tell you, CPL's smallest client has 100 units. Its largest client has about 90,000 units, something like that. Probably be 100,000 at some point. We've got to cater for both ends of that spectrum. Now, the guys at the top end might want to install Salesforce. The guys in the smaller scale might go, I can't afford Salesforce, but I still want to give this functionality to my clients. So how am I going to do that, Mr. Welsh, through CPL? Yeah. So I think we need to do both.
You need both. Yeah. Mark also asked, asset management and compliance, Brian, likely to be an area that gets increased attention over the coming years. Any plans to improve CPL in this area?
Yeah, so we do, but we'll probably so one of the things that you need to think about is that the building safety is very different in Scotland to how it is in England and how it is in Wales.
The responsibility for building safety rather than building safety itself.
Well, yes, and regulations and all of these sort of things are very, very different. So we need to build products that actually allow people to look after these sort of things. Now we already have a whole load of functionality within the product that that allows you to, check when your dry risers were last checked. So you I don't know, company A needs to go out and check dry risers and emergency lighting on building whatever. Report comes back, is there any remedial work needing done for that? Yes, there is. Okay, bang, bang, bang. And these have all got to be done. I mean, this is the shit people go to jail for when they don't do, right? So they're already, very good bits of CPL that will manage that for you. However, it can go further. It can go further to recording assets and all of these sort of things. So, of course, it's got to be something we think about. Again, though, this market, in Scotland, we've built this product that pretty much does everything. Yeah. But in England, what you tend to see, the larger firms will have their core block management product, and then they'll have a CRM system tied on the side, but then they'll also have a building management system built on the side as well. So it's about saying, what is that like? Okay, is that product the best product for that market, and would we interface with it, or do we go and write that ourselves? Okay. Now I have an interest in a product, a Scottish product that does that can do asset management. So it's called Viewable, and it's one of these things where you've got an iPhone, you go in, you scan around the room, it'll draw a floor plan, but the next iteration of it is going to have it's going to recognize assets and do all these sort of things. Now, is that useful to this market? It's very useful, I guess, to housing associations for individual dwellings. It's probably very useful to letting agents and these sort of things, or estate agents, stuff like that. Could that be put into use in block management for common areas as well?
Well, it sounds like more so in England than Scotland at the moment, because of the level of their management. The level, as we discussed, it's a more intensive level of service where they're responsible to one landlord, and that landlord passes the charges on. So that might be more. That might be an easier sell, if you like, to, well, A, because it's one person being the landlord, and these tenants, homeowners in England have got to pick up the tab for that, which is a bit more complicated when you've got to deal with 100 different owners.
Exactly.
Here. And the more intensive, if we can put it like that, style of management in England might lend itself to more of a building management system than perhaps in Scotland. But with changes in legislation, hopefully through Scottish Law Commission over the next couple of years, that could change.
And this is the thing, right? So this is where and this is the biggest, I guess, challenge to companies like CPL. We have a here's our income, here's our cost base. I mean, we pretty much, well, at this precise moment in time, every single bit of profit we make goes back into the business, to software development. Now, that's not how it's always been. Before we did the move to England, we made profit, But then you've got a situation where you go, here's my roadmap, and then something changed in legislation. You've got to go and write this first. So your roadmap then suddenly changes, and you've got to be able to pivot, because you've got to be able to provide the stuff that's legislative as well. So as these things change, the product evolves to change with it.
Lots of questions about AI, and we've maybe not quite completely thrashed them all, but is there any sense of looking at timing of AI? Is there any short-term, medium-term, long-term issues that CPL are looking at, or are you just looking at the whole thing globally?
No. So from a personal point of view, from a CPL point of view, and then there is, so you've got a system of coming, you can ask it. A property manager can ask a whole lot of information, get information back. Great, very, very quickly without going to run this report, that report. And then you can interrogate it. Yeah. And, AI accuracy has become far better than it was. I mean, I don't know, remember a time where you ask ChatGPT a question and it'll give you an answer, and then you ask it if it can fact check it and it'll say, no, it's wrong.
Yeah.
And there's that one that's banded about the solicitor who asked his paralegal to go and do a whole load of checking, and she just asked ChatGPT. ChatGPT made it up or found something that wasn't correct, and that guy's not a lawyer anymore because he took his information from the wrong place. So there's a fundamental, there's got to be trust in the system that the information you're getting is correct. So you've got the Assistimo one. You've got the one which is next on the agenda for Assistimo, which is ask the Assistimo checking information in a title deed or in a lease or something like that. Now that's available with other products, but that's the next step for us. And also just being able to do document searches, so coming back to the question that we had about the thing that was missed on the sale, tell me anything that's happened that's relevant in the last 10 years that I need to tell a purchaser of this property. That sort of stuff. So it massively helps out. So that to me is now so short and probably
and short. And what sort of journey time is that?
For short to me is about a year. Yeah. So beyond that, then you've got AI being able to look at the data and be able to respond with the answer for you as a property manager to go back. Okay, so now that's a massive leap of faith, because that is you not thinking, you not taking information, making a decision and writing it out. That's you taking that information, believing that it's correct, and then sending it on to your client. That, to me, I think has a bit of a way to go. And I'm not sure it has a bit of a way to go from a technology point of view. Well, it does. But I think the bigger part of that is belief in the user being able to do it.
Yeah.
But if we take the viewable thing that we spoke about a minute ago, right? And we say, okay, go and do, so we have an inspection app as well. So let's take, the inspection app doesn't do the scanning bit. But if we take two of those things together, take the inspection, here's the last inspection, take that viewable thing that uses a camera to do all that sort of really fancy bit of kit. I really like it. Well, wouldn't get involved if I didn't. And then you take an automated robot. Now you've, what's it called? Spot the Dog, the one that they advertise or that you see the stuff about AI. Now they cost about $80,000 at the moment, so well beyond the reach of people. But you know what the price of tech's like. It comes down and down and down and down. So in a number of years, I'm sitting there thinking, you've got the viewable product in Spot the Dog. Spot the Dog's walking up and down the common areas, scanning, going, there's damp in that corner. Yeah. There's this, there's that, there's the next thing. So it's doing, so that's the sort of stuff. So being able to find the information to feed to the property manager, say, so it's preventative, it's proactive, saying there's the problem.
Yep.
Now that to me is a good number of years down the road, but that's where it's going. I mean, I don't want to give away my entire roadmap and what's in my head. One of the things about Clifton that I have, right? So I can't remember which way around it is. My business coach the guy used to be my business coach who got me into Clifton heavily, would kill me. I can't remember. One of either one's ideation and two's futuristic, or it's the other way around. Okay. What that means is I don't live in today normally. I live in 5 years' time. I live in the future. I'm always thinking about it. It's always in my mind. And there's also, since we started this chat, there's probably about 4,000 ideas spun through my head and gone out the other end. Well, a couple of them will have stuck. That's how I spend my entire life. That is who I am. Yeah. So I'm always thinking of ways to create ideas, create innovation for the future.
Have you ever looked back, if you actually document them, have you ever looked back at any of your roadmaps? Have you gone back 2 years, 5 years, 8 years to look at what the roadmap looked like then and to compare with what it is today?
No. And it's funny actually, because that in Clifton is context, looking back. Well, maybe you're asking a different question, but context is looking back to find it. That's the future. No, I haven't. But I mean,
so off the top of your head, you'll know there's
yes,
some ideas that you thought day one
absolutely.
were fantastic, and now they just seem completely
and I've invested
outrageous.
in things that were a pile of shit as well that I should never have invested in. So obviously you make mistakes, but you got to just make sure the big ticket ones you don't make mistakes on. But I guess that's just life.
Yep.
You wouldn't want to make a mistake about something very, very big in your personal life or something like that. So for me, it's about just finding those things for the future that are going to innovate and all these sort of things. I'm a very impatient man, though, because I so live in the future. I want all my software developed now. I mean, there's a standing joke at some of our meetings where I go, "Oh, let's do this and let's do this and let's do this." Oh shit! And then someone says, "Can we just deal with all the ideas you had last week?" Yeah. So it's a difficult place to be sometimes.
Well, maybe you then can't answer the anonymous question, which is, what do you think the biggest productivity unlock in the product is? And also, what's the most underrated function in the product? As you say, since you've started this podcast, you've thought of another 1,000 ideas. Do you manage to get a point in your life, Brian, you should stop and reset and just
think about
review what you're doing? But,
I mean, I guess it's who I am, and I do try and do that. I absolutely try and enjoy today and enjoy successes and all of these sort of things. It comes back to the success question as well. What's that? It's all in the future. Biggest productivity unlock, a system is going to be a huge one, but the one that at the moment is Blockworks, because that automates the entire contractor process and basically don't ever post another invoice in your life. They'll it's all AI generated into CPL, saves a shitload of time, can be used on ad hoc works, contract works, repeat works, grounds maintenance, stair cleaning, all of that sort of stuff. So it can be used in all of that. That is an absolute, and the uptake of that is growing massively by the week. Yeah. But that's the one, because this is the problem. People say to me, so you generate all of these productivity solutions. So does that mean people make people redundant and they have less, they make more profit and all these sort of things? I don't think about it like that. I think about it as, okay, I no longer need to do this. So this person can now move over here to give our clients a better service.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it. And that's my job. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. That's what I'm passionate about. The only other one I would say is the one thing that's not used a huge amount is auto bank rec. So not a lot of people use the kind of auto bank rec function where you drag the information from the bank into the product and it automatically kind of maps them all together and just gives you the ones that.
And does that need a bit more work done on it?
No,
Brian?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I just don't think the uptake on it has been that high, and I think that would be another productivity unlock.
And Jacqueline seems keen on a 3-year term. She wants to know what the biggest challenges are for CPL over the next 3 years. Why 3 years? I don't know. You can change that to 1 year, 5 years. If you like.
I think I've already answered the question, but in a different way. Technology. It is keeping up with technology and using technology in a way that best benefits our clients and their customers. That's our biggest challenge is which ones to go after. I mean, if I had 100 million quid sitting in the bank to go and write software to do everything I wanted to do, then great. But there's a reality here. We can only develop as much software as we can develop, and as I mentioned earlier, AI is hurtling at a huge pace. It's harnessing that and what we can do. But what you've got to remember is, okay, coming back to this superpower thing that was listening to Radio 5 this morning. I was talking about this AI superpower thing, and there were a couple of really relevant points made. Okay, one, do you know how much electricity you need to run a data center for AI? It is fundamentally humongous. Okay, it is massive, the amount of power you need. So you need to site your data center somewhere where it's cheap to buy electricity. Is it cheap to buy electricity in the UK? No, it's fucking not. Okay. And the other one is you need to site it somewhere where they've got phenomenal infrastructure in their utilities. And does the UK have that? I'm not an expert, but I would probably say no. So, there are some, before we can harness all of this, you need to be able to build a data center and that damn thing run and have power to run it in the UK.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to England. We've touched on that a bit because some questions were coming in about your venture to the English market. And Property Mill appears to have been incredibly successful in the Scottish market.
Yeah.
We might have touched on this, but is there anything in particular that led you to entering the English market? How would you gauge that entry into the market? Coming back to the question of success again, of what is success, but do you see it going in a direction that you're pleased with?
Yeah. I mean, we filled our early adopter program pretty damn quickly. And there are some inherent issues. Well, not inherent issues. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. There are some. So this is all about bringing efficiencies and bringing something to the market that doesn't currently exist. Okay, I've spoken about the fact that CPL is an entirely complete solution that does everything. That doesn't tend to, as far as I know, exist. Certainly, the people we're talking to, and that number's in a quite high number of people we're talking to. So that was one of the reasons for doing it. I mean, I'm not going to delve into where our USPs are against other products or anything like that. But suffice to say that I think, so from a transparency point of view, because of the Property Factors Act, that put our software on a trajectory where there are certain things it has to do to be so that factors can be compliant and all of these sort of things. Now, England is entirely different. If you're a member of what was ARMA, then you stick by a set of rules and all of these sort of things. But so it's about taking a product that does come from somewhere with legislation and putting it into somewhere that doesn't currently. Now, that's going to change at some point fundamentally. No, it's got to. So the success for us, I think, is... I mean, and I wouldn't even put it a number of users or anything like that. I mean, so I'll give myself a target, and nobody even my SLT will listen to this and go, "Fuck, here we go. Here's another one." Our target would be to have the same number of units on Proptimo in England that we have in Scotland. That would be that would look like success in the next 2 to 3 years for me.
And would you envisage a similar, we've talked about a conversation amongst interested party stakeholders, would you see something similar in England being necessary, having that conversation? Or is that conversation already happening because of the legislative changes coming up?
Having been to a number of these kind of conferences, seminars, and I think the conversation in England is already happening, but there's nothing to stop somebody else having a narrative about it and talking about it. And, at the end of the day, it's about the wider audience understanding things.
Yeah.
So to me, if that comes from this voice, or this voice, it doesn't matter as long as it's a voice.
Yeah. Time for a sales pitch, if you like. Tom has an interesting question. He wants to hear your take, Brian, on what credentials do you bring to the block management sector? I'm not sure if that's you personally or not. Tom can maybe answer that, or maybe it's CPL. For those who might be listening who don't know very much, haven't heard of CPL before, what attributes do you bring to the market, to the English market, and to them?
I mean, so when you enter a market and you have no customers, you're known as a disruptor, I guess. Yeah. And disruptors have a certain view on the world. They normally drop their pants price-wise just to get business. Because, hey, that's a great way to do it to try and to get business, because, some people are drawn by price, I mean, it's a fact of life. It's a fact of life. I had a phrase for an ex of mine. It was buy cheap, buy twice. Yeah. So, it's just the way of the world. I've fallen into the trap myself on a number of occasions. So, but we're not disrupting. That's not how I see us in the English market. People in the English market might think that, but we're not coming in. We're coming in with a premium product that has pretty much run the property factoring industry in Scotland. So the same as what they do in England, in Scotland, for the last, I don't know, 15 years, my pedigree being 26. Some people don't think years matter, but I think it does, because if you continually innovate and continually prove that you can serve a market, then I think it matters
there's
massively.
something in that. You've done it over a period of time.
You've
encountered different markets, different governments, so you've stood the test of time.
And and changes in legislation and everything like that. So that track record and growing us to 450,000 units on the platform, I think is a massive set of credentials for the English market. Yeah, because we've done it. Yes, okay. Yes, you work differently. Fundamentally, you look after the common areas of property.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and we have a product that can help you, or a tool to help you do that.
Well, I hope that satisfies Tom. I'm sure you'll find out as the day
staring
goes by.
from over there,
But he's also asking another question. How important is it to work with privately owned companies in the current age of private equity run tech space?
Okay, so I mean, so PE, there's targets, there's budgets, there's covenants, there's all of these sort of things going on possibly with a PE ran business, as there should be, because someone has given someone money to make something happen, and they are looking for a return. That is the point they are in. Privately owned software companies are different. Okay, I mean, you may say that's not a good thing. I guess it allows us to focus on product development, focus on where we want to go as a business. It also allows us to pivot. It also allows me to, so I'll give you a prime example. We've got a couple of events coming up. Okay. I don't like our stand that our exhibition stand. Okay. I don't like it. It's big, it's bulky, it's a pain in the arse to move around. It's too big. I don't like it. Okay. Do we have budget for a new one this year? No, we don't. Are we buying one? Yes, we are. That's a very small example. That decision was very, very easy for me to make. Yeah, fine. I'll find the budget for it. Yep. Yeah. So, but a more difficult one is, okay, we want to get X out the door within 3 months. Can we do that? No, we can't. What do we need to do that? Tell me what you need, team, to make this happen. Tell me how much it's going to cost, and I'll tell you if we can do that. Yeah. If it's not in budget, it's not in budget. But I can make that decision as to whether we do it. And and Tom does this all the time. He pitches for what he wants in our product roadmap and all of these sort of things. Now, so there are, I don't know, 5-6 stakeholders in our business that have an input into where the direction of the product. The customers obviously have one of the biggest inputs into that. But so if Tom comes back from a sales demo and we need X, Y, and Z, then okay, let's look at the reach and the impact of that product development. Do we need to go and get a contractor in to help us finish that? Do we need to get someone in to help with X so we can get stuff out the door? Yes, we do. Okay, let's do it. I think that's the difference.
Well, you've got the flexibility to do that, being a private business. What about your customers? If they're either privately owned customers or have private equity backing for them, do you recognize any difference there?
I don't think I see a massive amount of difference in those. I mean, to be fair, the majority of our clients are privately owned. Yeah. The majority of our clients are privately owned. So I don't necessarily, or haven't necessarily seen a difference up to now with that. Other than, there's a lot of block management companies who own software companies, for instance. Yep. I mean, I have to say, maybe it's the, I don't know, maybe it's something in me, but I mean, buying a product that's owned by a competitor, to me, would always be I don't know. Anyway, not my thing, but it's certainly down south. There's and there's a number of that going on. Yeah.
Brian, we can't bring it to a close without talking about the podcast itself. Which I'm sure when you started CPL, or maybe even 5-6 years ago, you hadn't thought about where you've got to with your podcast, and I've given you certainly plenty of plaudits on what the industry thinks of the podcast. Can I go back 5 years to when you started? I reckon you must have done over 100 now. You'll know the number. You should do. Tom will know the number.
I don't know.
Did you have any initial hopes, aspirations for it beyond what we're talking about? about conversations? Have they been realised? Have you hit the target audience that you thought? Is there a different target audience out there that you're thinking about?
Do you know, it's funny actually, because when I started this, it was a throwaway comment to my business coach at the time, Oliver Hill. He lives in Norwich. He's a good golfer, actually. I played him twice. He's beat me both times. Probably the reason he's not my business coach anymore. No, that's not true. It's just the
So
fact
the handicap
that
system didn't work.
I went off in another direction. No, handicaps allowed. Great guy. Still catch up with him a lot. In fact, I'm meeting him in London in the next couple of weeks. So he was absolutely blown away about the fact that he saw me as this very successful entrepreneur. Okay, I hate the word entrepreneur, and I'd say I probably hate it less than I used to hate it, to be perfectly honest with you. But he said, "Why don't you're obviously this guy who knows a lot about this industry. You service a lot of its clients. Why don't you do something that kind of builds this brand, Brian?" Okay. I pissed myself laughing for 10 minutes.
I was trying to keep a straight face there, Brian.
No, exactly,
Anyway,
exactly.
Sorry.
I mean, what a lot of rubbish. But at the end of the day, it was more about taking that kind of, I'm in a unique position, right? That I deal with practically every property factor in Scotland of a certain size, and I hear about all their problems, and and we tried once to create a kind of user group meeting, and there was a lot of pushback about it because people didn't want to sit in a room with our competitors, and it was a reasonably traditional market, so we need to find a way to get the narrative moving in a different way. And he saw that from my conversations with him about my challenges and issues with it within business, whatever we were talking about. And so the brand Brian thing was a wee bit of a kind of a side joke of his. But he said, you're going to get conversation moving. And we have. I mean, we've done loads of stuff about, mental well-being, fitness, as well as the core stuff about the market, and interviewing people. I mean, the first guy on it was Nigel Glenn, for God's sake, So
Nigel Glenn,
being
for the listener who doesn't know who Nigel is.
Yeah, so Nigel was the CEO of Arma, and Andrew Gilmore was the CEO of IRPM, and then when those two companies came together, or two organizations came together, Andrew is now the CEO of TPI, but Nigel's still in and around the property market, or the property industry. So it was about getting a conversation going. Now, I'm pretty sure the listenership right in the early days was when, I don't know, Derek McDonald was on, it was, or his staff and all the competitors, whenever David was on, it was the same. And Lorraine's been on, you've been on, we've had tons of people from industry on talking about it. And it was all, the one thing that came up time and time again was all about education. So whilst I think the listenership in the beginning was the market itself, I think that has pushed out now, because I do get the odd email from people who say, I've listened to this and I've listened to that, and blah, 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 and stuff like that. But there was no real target. I didn't do it as a, it's like, do I post a LinkedIn post to get, 1,000 impressions? No, I don't. I post it because if one person reads it and gets something out of it, then that's a plus for me. So, it's never going to, it's not envisaged to be something that, gets 100,000 listeners a week. That's not what it's about. It's about just having the conversation, helping to move some subject in the right direction so that it can get dealt
Seems to me there's one group missing from those who you've invited on amongst a huge array. And I might be wrong on this, Brian, but have you ever invited a homeowner or an owners association to sit around the table?
No, I haven't. And this did come up actually when we did the MSP stroke factor. about having a homeowner on that panel as well? Okay. A number of reasons. Okay. I don't have enough microphones. The table's not big enough. Okay, taking the two joke ones apart.
Poor reasons, but let's come down to this.
The actual reason, So the actual reason was that I didn't want to. Yes, I would do that if anyone can find one of your resident association or whatever who wants to come on, absolutely, let's sit down and have a chat. I do not want to have a factor bashing conversation. Okay, let's leave that to the Times to do. Yeah, because that's not the point. The point is about getting people around a table to have a genuine conversation about how to make things better. And yes, I would do it. Absolutely, I'd do it. And no, I have not done it yet. And the only reason that we haven't, the only reason we haven't is because I didn't want to create something that just had a forum for some sort of toxic behavior. Now, you have the same problem as I have, okay? It is rare that someone phones us up or sends an email and goes, well done. That was phenomenal. That was brilliant. Well done. Although I do see quite a few positive reviews on your LinkedIn. Yeah, and a number of factors LinkedIn. But there's a fundamental here. People tend to want to go on things, to moan about things and stuff like that. Yeah. Now, we have had a number of people on who are residents in properties, but they also tend to sit on committees for high-rise properties and these sort of things. So a different demographic or cohort from what you're talking about. Yes, I would do it. But if it's just going to be so someone can vent, then...
Which it may well be.
Yeah, but I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in finding a solution.
But what else is interesting is, leaving the factoring industry to one side, I would suggest that all of your guests at one point in their time have been a homeowner, have had common property. So they all come with that added value to the conversation. But yes, I would encourage you to try and source some eloquent, coherent owners association representative that are out there and would be interested in joining the conversation and looking for change.
Yeah. Okay.
David Dorn is looking to pick your brains on probably an unfair question, but he wants to know, what was your favourite podcast?
Not his.
Well,
yeah, I was always going to say that.
Perhaps he shouldn't have asked the question. Okay. Is it unfair to ask for one, or is there a theme to it? You've mentioned TPI.
So there have been many. I mean, it's difficult, and plus the fact the passage of time over 5 years. The one that sticks in my mind was Nigel Glenn's, the first one, because he came on. He didn't realize it was audio only. He'd had The Guardian before it, and he was going on to talk to the Times or something like that about Grenfell. Yeah, so that was just phenomenal for me. The first ever Blocktalk that I did. Andrew Bulmer's always amazing when he comes on. I just find him fascinating to listen to. I mean, he's just so passionate about what he does. In fact, we did one recently with him about the merger of PM, Property Managers Association, and TPI. However, the three that actually stick in my mind at the moment are three quite recent ones, and it's the ones that we've done as dual people, as two people on the podcast, because we got more mics and got a bigger table. That was Jacqueline Borthwick and Mike Guthrie, and that was all about title deeds and and creation of title deeds, how they're created, and all of these sort of things, and trying to make it, because apparently there's a development somewhere where I don't know, there's 20 people in it in the development, and if you want to change factor, you've got to do it on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. with 40 people when there's only 20 houses and these sort of things, which is now involving property factors in the creation of title deeds is a good thing, because at the end of the day they understand how what makes it the best and most productive for everyone to run a development, whether people who live in houses think that, but at the end of the day, that's the fundamental. You guys don't want hassle. You want happy customers who have great homes that are looked after and maintained properly and all these sort of things. So why would you create a title deed that doesn't allow that to happen? So that was a really, really interesting conversation. The Derek McDonald and Mark Griffin one was hugely. I don't know if any of these are out yet. They'll be out before this. Derek and Mark's was really good. Best one I've done though recently has got to be Paul Sweeney and David Doran. That was thoroughly.
Was that quite meaty?
Do you know, it had the potential of being, but actually it didn't end up being as controversial as I thought it was going to be. Yeah. I was really looking forward to, fisticuffs at dawn, but it just never.
So that's not come out yet.
And no, they're not. They'll be out before this is out. But also I think in fact I met someone at the Leasehold conference the other day who has something to do with this as well. But Malcolm Perryman from TPI does a well-being survey every year about, it kind of has the finger on the pulse of what's going on with the well-being of people in the industry.
But sorry, to qualify, only in England and Wales?
Only in England and Wales at the moment, yes. Yeah. So two things to talk about that. And I saw something on LinkedIn the other day, and it was a crossroads, and it was any other job, block management. And it was like, do people choose to go into block management, or is it something they kind of fall into? And it was a really interesting kind of really interesting article. I must find it and share it on LinkedIn. But the other thing is as well, this was an interesting one. I can't remember who told me this, so it must have come from someone who's close to TPI. I can't remember. I was chatting to someone the other day, and that is that the average property manager in England and Wales, late 30s female, average in Scotland, I think is the same age, but might be older, might be younger, I don't know, but is male. And that's an interesting stat.
Yeah. What do you take from that?
What I take from it is that going to change? I'm assuming the well-being survey will be done across the whole of the TPI, Scotland included next year. Yeah. So will that affect? I mean, okay, Scotland's 10% the size of England, so the maybe the ability to skew any results would be minimal. Yeah. But it was an interesting fact because well-being for men and women, I think, is entirely different. Well, in my opinion, anyway. Yeah.
Okay, Brian, we'll need to try and finally wrap this up. I think you've got a dental
2 hours later, I'd tell you.
What, just to finish off, any plans, Brian, not for this afternoon, but for the future? Anything of any significance? Let's move away from specific products. Just generally, what are you going to spend the next year doing?
So, I mean, the biggest thing for us in the next year, for me personally, I mean, the England launch is something that obviously I'm involved in, but not hugely. There's some very, very good people in the team who are dealing with that stuff. So for me, the next year is all going to be about where are we taking AI? What's the evolution of the Proptimo product for the benefit of our client base, Scotland and the rest of the UK? And also, and I already do this, so I do kind of monthly, quarterly catch-ups with all of our clients. I mean, the Scottish clients are, I guess they are, they've been clients for up to 15 years, right? In fact, longer, some of them, So to me, it's about making sure that we've got innovation and everything that we need to do for the English market, getting involved in that to a degree where I need to, and then just making sure that all the Scottish clients are very happy and have an input into where the product's going as well. And that's why we do quarterly innovation meetings with our clients and all of that sort of stuff. So continuing to do that and to finally buy another flat in Glasgow.
And to take care of your work-life balance.
Yes, absolutely.
That was something.
See, there you go. There you go. I talk about work all the time. But no, work-life balance is massively important to me. I mean, I go to a gym in Glasgow down on the south of the river, a place called Fly. I don't train with their classes, although they look absolutely phenomenal. But that's where my PT, that's where I work out my PT, and it's a phenomenal place. I love it.
Good. Well, you keep that up, okay. Brian. I'm sure the listeners now know quite a bit more about the man
They'll
and
not
his
have got
team
to 2 hours in.
and his team, the man and his team who helps the Scottish property factoring industry and who hopefully can make strides into England beyond what you're doing at the moment. We wish you well with that. So thanks for sharing all your thoughts, all your insights. I have been delighted to help Brian present this podcast. Hopefully you'll have me back sometime soon, Brian. So thanks and good luck for the future of CPL.
Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming in to do this as well. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.